what do you miss the most from Egypt?
And what do you miss the most from Egypt?
And what do you miss the most from Egypt?
My family and my friends.
My family and my friends.
My family and my friends. I try to go home often, but
I try to go home often, but
it's expensive to go back.
it's expensive to go back.
It's expensive to go back. I have some friends coming to visit next month, so
I have some friends coming to visit next month, so
I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm really looking forward to that.
I'm really looking forward to that.
Perspectives.
Perspectives.
Perspectives. How have you changed?
How have you changed?
How have you changed? Listen to these statements about changes.
Listen to these statements about changes.
Listen to these statements about changes. 1.
1.
1.
When I was a kid,
When I was a kid,
I used to be very messy.
I used to be very messy.
But now I'm very neat.
But now I'm very neat.
2.
2.
2.
I didn't used to collect anything, but now I do.
I didn't used to collect anything, but now I do.
I didn't used to collect anything, but now I do.
3.
3.
3.
I never used to play sports, but now I like to keep fit.
I never used to play sports, but now I like to keep fit.
I never used to play sports, but now I like to keep fit.
4.
4.
4.
I never used to worry about money, but I do now.
I never used to worry about money, but I do now.
I never used to worry about money, but I do now.
5.
5.
5.
I used to have a lot of hobbies.
I used to have a lot of hobbies.
But now I don't have any free time.
But now I don't have any free time.
6.
6.
6.
I didn't used to follow politics.
I didn't used to follow politics.
I didn't used to follow politics. But now I check headlines online every day.
But now I check headlines online every day.
But now I check headlines online every day.
7.
7.
7.
When I was younger, I used to care a lot about my appearance.
When I was younger, I used to care a lot about my appearance.
When I was younger, I used to care a lot about my appearance. Now I'm too busy to care how I look.
Now I'm too busy to care how I look.
Now I'm too busy to care how I look.
Perspectives.
Perspectives.
Perspectives. Transportation services.
Transportation services.
Transportation services. Listen to these comments about transportation services.
Listen to these comments about transportation services.
Listen to these comments about transportation services.
The buses are old and slow.
The buses are old and slow.
The buses are old and slow, and they cause too much pollution.
And they cause too much pollution.
And they cause too much pollution. In cities with less pollution,
In cities with less pollution,
in cities with less pollution, people are healthier.
people are healthier.
People are healthier.
There are too many cars.
There are too many cars.
There are too many cars. All the cars, taxis, and buses are a danger to bicyclists.
All the cars, taxis, and buses are a danger to bicyclists.
All the cars, taxis, and buses are a danger to bicyclists. There is too much traffic.
There is too much traffic.
There is too much traffic.
There should be fewer cars.
There should be fewer cars.
There should be fewer cars. But I think that the biggest problem is parking.
But I think that the biggest problem is parking.
But I think that the biggest problem is parking. There just isn't enough parking.
There just isn't enough parking.
There just isn't enough parking.
Listening.
Listening.
Listening. Singapore solves it.
Singapore solves it.
Singapore solves it. Listen to a resident of Singapore talk about how his city has tried to solve its traffic problems.
Listen to a resident of Singapore talk about how his city has tried to solve its traffic problems.
Listen to a resident of Singapore talk about how his city has tried to solve its traffic problems.
Singapore has done a lot to try to solve its traffic problems.
Singapore has done a lot to try to solve its traffic problems.
Singapore has done a lot to try to solve its traffic problems. For example,
For example,
to drive into the downtown business district,
to drive into the downtown business district,
to drive into the downtown business district, motorists need to buy a special pass.
motorists need to buy a special pass.
Motorists need to buy a special pass. They can go into the business district.
They can go into the business district
They can go into the business district only if they have the pass on their windshield.
only if they have the pass on their windshield.
Only if they have the pass on their windshield. Another thing Singapore has done is to make it more difficult to buy cars.
Another thing Singapore has done is to make it more difficult to buy cars.
Another thing Singapore has done is to make it more difficult to buy cars. People have to apply for a certificate before they can buy a car.
People have to apply for a certificate before they can buy a car.
People have to apply for a certificate before they can buy a car. Not everyone can get a certificate.
Not everyone can get a certificate.
Not everyone can get a certificate. There's a limited number of them.
There's a limited number of them.
There's a limited number of them. There's also a high tax on cars.
There's also a high tax on cars.
There's also a high tax on cars. So a new one costs a lot of money.
So a new one costs a lot of money.
So a new one costs a lot of money. A car can cost 3 or 4 times more in Singapore.
A car can cost 3 or 4 times more in Singapore.
A car can cost 3 or 4 times more in Singapore than in the US or Canada.
Than in the US or Canada.
Than in the US or Canada. The other thing Singapore has done.
The other thing Singapore has done.
The other thing Singapore has done is build an excellent public transportation system.
Is build an excellent public transportation system.
Is build an excellent public transportation system. Their subway system is one of the best in the world.
Their subway system is one of the best in the world.
Their subway system is one of the best in the world. And there's also a very good taxi and bus system.
And there's also a very good taxi and bus system.
And there's also a very good taxi and bus system.